Hi, welcome to Family Sociology, and here we're going to look at Chapter 4, Wedding Bells, Part 1. Okay, now in our society, many families are formed through marriage. Now in Canada, the only legal kind of marriage is one based on monogamy. A current alternative to marriage is unmarried cohabitation, and it's been increasingly more popular. Since 2005, same-sex marriages have also been legal in Canada. Now, people marry for many different reasons, and we're going to look at some of the social factors that affect this decision. This chapter will conclude with a look at marital and relationship happiness and long-lasting marriages. Okay, now, you're probably aware the wedding ceremonies are different around the world. Ceremonies may be universal, in that almost all cultures mark a marriage with some sort of ceremony. However, the ceremony looks like, what's worn at those weddings and who's invited, this will all vary from culture to culture. Sociologists have suggested that wedding ceremonies have two functions. The first is the public acknowledgement of the creation of a new family. Now, historically, this signified an introduction of a new couple to the community and the community to the new couple. And secondly, it's a ritual organized by the family, making changes in status and in roles among all family members, moving from family of orientation to what will likely become your family of procreation. You'll remember those from a previous class. Now also, the role of son, daughter, they don't disappear. However, you do gain new roles and new status. Husband and wife, mother and father, uncle, aunt, brother, sister. So historically, the family has been the central organizational unit in almost all societies. In Canada, the proportion of married people has been declining over the past decades, while the proportion of those who are divorced and those who have never married has been increasing. Cohabitation, as mentioned earlier, is becoming more acceptable among young adults, and as mentioned in the introduction, the same-sex marriages has been legal since 2005. I think it was June 4th or 3rd. Marriage has both legal and social recognition as a union. The legal portion involves both the provincial and the federal governments. The provinces, they manage marriages and divorces. The federal responsibilities are connected via two acts. Let's look at the two acts. The Marriage Prohibited Degrees Act. It identifies people, for example brothers and sisters, who cannot marry as they are too closely related. And then secondly is the Civil Marriage Act, which defines marriage as a union of two people to the exclusion of all others. Now, we've known this term to be monogamy. It's the only legal form of marriage in Canada. Now, in a society such as Canada, in which there are high rates of divorce and remarriage, sociologists have coined the term serial monogamy. And now that's to describe a series of marriages to different partners, although only one at a time. There are other terms or forms of unions which are not legal in Canada, however, they are in other countries. Marriage of one person to more than one person of the opposite sex, that's known as polygamy. There are two forms. There's polygyny, or soror polygyny, and maternal polygyny. Polyamory are relationships where individuals have more than one intimate partner, and with the condition that they are not married and there is no content of all partners. There is consent from all partners. Now, although the majority of couples in Canada will marry, There are other alternative living arrangements in Canada, and as I've mentioned, and I'll repeat it again, cohabitation. Now, it's also known as common law unions. There are a relationship. They are a relationship in which the partners live together but are not married. This, for some, is a trial run towards marriage. However, for many others, it's an alternative to marriage. They commit to each other, and they have and raise kids. Now, another form that's gaining more popularity, interestingly, is what's known as LAT, living apart together. Here, the LATs see themselves as a couple. However, they don't live together. They might be in different cities, even different provinces. This represents about 7 to 8% of the relationships. Now, why would anyone want to live apart while engaged in an intimate relationship? Well, it could be for, one or both of the people are still completing school, or they have a limited income, or work or career locations are far apart. You might want to check in your textbook on the data on 4.1 infographic. Might come in handy in understanding that. Marriage is still the most predominant family structure in Canada. However, it is slipping. 2011, 67% and going down are married. Sociologists use the term marriage rate to describe the measure of marriages that occur within a given year, excluding common law unions and already existing marriages. These are just a few of the new. These are just new marriages in any given year. In 2008, 147,288 marriages occurred in Canada. At 4.4 marriages per 1,000 people, the marriage rate is at the lowest it's been in the past century. Social, economic, and legal factors determine age at which people tend to marry. And for example, after the Great Depression, that was in around 1936, the rate reached almost 11 marriages per 1,000 people. Now, this could have been as a result of uncertainty of war, men rushing out to marry before going to war. There was another peak of marriages, and that was in the 70s, as the baby boom generation entered adulthood. Today, first marriages occur a lot later in life, and it's based on women's greater educational levels and poor opportunities for young workers. Again, check the graphic out I have here. An increase in the proportion of couples living together, cohabitating before marriage. In 2016, 45.2% of couples were married. 54.8% were unmarried. They were either never married, they were either never married, cohabitating, divorced, separated, or widowed. So from 61% married and 39% unmarried in 1981. Quite a shift. So let's now consider the law and marriage. Marriage is a legal contract governed by law. In Canada, both partners must be 18 years of old, 19 in BC, may marry as early as 16 with parental consent. Now, some other restrictions include limitations as to who you can marry. Now, on page 93, 94, box 4.2, check out that. Now, marriage of convenience is a marriage where people's sole purpose is for the spouse to immigrate, and it's illegal in Canada. As marriage is a legal agreement, some couples draw up prenuptial agreements or a marriage contract, a legal document that alters the effect of the law, usually as it applies to property. Often it's an agreement of who gets what should the relationship come to an end. Now, if common law couples break up, rights to assets are often not as well defined by law, and as a result, some sign a cohabitation agreement. Mixed unions and same-sex marriages are a growing part of society. With greater diversity in Canada, it's not surprising that mixed couples in which one spouse or partner is a member of a visible minority group and the other is not, as well as couples comprised of two different visible minority groups. In 2011, nearly 4.6% of Canadian couples were mixed unions. Mixed union couples that are younger are better off educationally and economically and are more likely to live in large urban areas. So why are mixed union marriages better educated? You might ask. Well, good question. So one, education helped immigrants and their children adapt to a dominant culture. And two, education reduces the likelihood of remaining in the ethnic enclave, thus having a chance to meet a much more diverse group than in a neighborhood of all the same ethnicity. And that's what an enclave is. Now, same-sex marriages have been legal since July 20th, not June 3rd or 4th, July 20th, 2005. The number of same-sex married couples nearly tripled from 2006 to 2011, and same-sex common law couples increased by 15%. So the legal marriage enabled same-sex couples to gain legal recognition and benefits the same as marriage between heterosexual marriages. It opens the door to better understood by others, as they could use the term heterosexual couples use: spouse, marriage, daughter-in-law, wife, husband, a sort of normalizing the same-sex couple. Same-sex couples also tend to be more egalitarian as the division of labor is concerned. Now that means that there's more equal share of the household. Now we are socialized to regard marriage as a superior to other kinds of adult relationships like non-sexual friendships, domestic partnerships, long-term cohabitation, or single-parented families. However, there are very many different sort of unions other than marriage. So why do we marry? What's the attraction? Well, first, there's status. Marriage can give us a sense of belonging, a sense of place in society. Marriage provides an enforceable trust. Legal provisions for support and sexual fidelity provide the couple with a degree of security. Now, secondly, economics. Money is not usually the main reason to marry. However, it is a consideration. Children, lifestyle, and etc. Do either partner want additional education? How do the couple want to live? Buy a home or rent? These need to have the economic means to achieve and attain what their family needs to succeed. Thirdly, sex. Marriage provides regulations concerning sexual behavior, limiting sexual relations to an exclusive partner and avoiding adultery, which is a ground for divorce. Partners have the right to sexual access to one another and to be treated kindly, to expect faithfulness, and to use family assets. 4, children. Marriages with children, partners have a responsibility to support each other and any children they might have. Now, this support is to promote success, financial support, that's emotional support, psychological support. 5, identity. Being married is an important part of one's identity. Used to be expected that a woman would take her husband's name. However, today, that's not necessarily so. It depends on which province you live in as to what you might be doing. Some of a family's identity is to describe who is in our family and who is an outsider. It's kind of like a who are we as our family. And that's where we could have our traditions, our beliefs, values, what makes us, us, and them, them. And then, of course, 6, we could use love and support comes through marriage. Most marriages equals commitment, the emotional support, and the idea of romantic love. Even if there are troubles, unfailing love and support are still at the foundation of the relationship and the basis for addressing troubles and enabling the rapport the communication to sustain a healthy relationship. There is an introduction to beginning to get together. We consider what is a marriage. So, alternatives to marriage, the roles of marriage in a society, the laws of marriage, mixed marriages, and why marry. So we're going to follow this up in part 2. We'll explore the sociological perspective views of marriage. We'll look at a common law more and what makes relationships, marriages, happy. We'll look at conflicts in marriage and the types of marriage. And we're going to finish that part 2 off with some thoughts about marriage in the future. So there we are, getting started with the idea of marriage, and we'll carry on next in part 2. Bye now.